How you doing? I'm Joe Hunt. So I've been a long time smoker, probably since I was 18. Smoked Marlboro cigarettes for years. I got to the point where it was just too expensive. I get all the coupons, the online coupons, and okay, I get it down to maybe I'm here in Indiana, so about $5, as opposed to right across the border in Chicago where you're spending 11 or 12, which is just insane. But even so, for my discounted $5, after my coupon rate, you smoke a pack and a half or a pack a day or whatever the case may be, and it adds up. So I ended up starting rolling my own cigarettes, as you can see, and I was a little skeptical at first about, is it going to taste the same? What's going to happen? I don't know. So I did a little research, and I found that if you take two brands, you mix them together, you take a certain type of roll tube, it tastes fairly similar. So I ended up trying it, and it actually wasn't bad. Doing the math for what I'd spend on the tobacco, the tubes, which you can see here. This time I happened to get the Double Diamond. This is the regular Reds. I smoked Marlboro Menthol for years. I tried this time with the Red. It tasted more like a regular Red as opposed to a regular menthol, but you can see it's an empty tube. It comes in a package of 200 for the king size, 250 if you get 100 because they're a little bit thinner. And so I did the Double Diamond this time. It was pretty good. I wanted to try out the Gambler, which you can see this time I just got a shipment in of the five cartons here of the Gambler size, and this is actually a menthol. So I'm going to try the difference between the two, but essentially the point of what I'm doing here today is to get out a little information on the injectors themselves. So because I didn't know if I was gonna like the cigarette, how it was gonna taste, I was a little scared in the fact. What I decided to do is just get a very inexpensive injector that you see here. So locally here, I use Windy City Cigars. They shipped it out to my house. It was fairly inexpensive for what it was. I think I spent $60 on the injector, the two bags, which is 1 pound a piece of the tobacco themselves, a 5-pack carton of the Double Diamond here, and actually the little cigarette case itself, because obviously you need to have something to hold your cigarettes in. This was a couple dollars, and this was maybe $6 or $7 in itself. So I tried this one out, and it's a fairly simple procedure. It's not expensive at all. It's fairly lightweight plastic. Fairly simple design. I'm going to set this one to the side here for now and kind of show you what I did compared to this one. I purchased this Swift a couple days ago. I did a couple packs out of it, and I actually enjoyed this much better, and I'll explain why for a couple dollars more. But for this, I'm going to explain the process a little bit and how this works. You take the tube itself. Underneath here, there's the packing tool for the tobacco. You stick this on the end here. It's got a little rubber grommet piece that holds the tube together there as you're pulling back the mechanism. So because you're going to close this, it's going to put the pressure on the tube so it's not going to slide out. But in the meantime, that goes up, this goes out. The tube itself is just going to slide very gently right on here. You have to be careful with that. I've squished many of these tubes, which pretty much makes them useless at that point. And so a couple little tricks to, obviously, before you get the actual tobacco inside there. What I did in this case, like I said, was I mixed these two, the Robust and the Mint, to try and get as close as I could to the Marlboro Menthol flavoring. Over here you can see I put it in this container here, mix them up a little bit, and you can see there's little strands. There's some pieces are a little bit longer than others. One thing that I found online that's a really good tip, at first I was just putting it right in there. You have to let it dry out a little bit to a consistency where it's, like at this point, this is the bottom of this one section. These pieces are really small. Which you have to be careful whether you're putting in something that's a little bit thicker like this, a little more wet. You're not going to add as much tobacco as you would to this piece right here, where there's very fine threads. Inevitably, what ends up happening if you put too much of the tobacco in the injector for the cigarette, it becomes essentially unsmokable. It's like you're sucking through a closed straw. You can't get it. At the other aspect of that, at the other end of that, is if you don't put enough, it's just going to fall out. So I went through a myriad of trials and tribulations trying to figure out which way is going to be the best, and I'm still quite getting the hang of it, because again, you have to make adjustments depending on whether you're getting that tobacco that's, you know, longer threads that you have to pack down in, or that's already kind of crumbled up and drier. You can't put as much of this in there as you would the other side. So you can bear that in mind. I even actually have a scale here to get an idea, because again, trying to figure out how much, it doesn't tell you in any of the instructions. So weighing it out, you have about 0.8 is what I find is the weight that you're looking for. So it's about 0.6, a little bit more. Let's see if I can get this. There you go. That's about 0.8. So when you're grabbing it, you're gonna get a little section like this. You're gonna it's a pinch is really what you're going for there, and then you're gonna put that in the side here. If it's this larger pieces, it's gonna stick out a little bit higher as you even this out on the injector area here where you actually put the tobacco in. I try to even it out here to where it's not gonna clump up at all. Take the packer tool here, you pack it in, kind of have to give it a little wiggle as it goes in there to get it nice and packed, right? And again, so when everything is packed in, there's a little lip edge inside the bottom here that it's not going to quite come up to. If it's over that lip edge, it's going to be way too thick. You're not going to be able to enjoy that cigarette. It's going to be a waste of good tobacco. So in this one, because again it's a fairly inexpensive lightweight piece, you have to get a little bit of leverage on it. If you're forcing it too much, you've packed it too much. Okay, and if it's super easy, you know you haven't put enough in. You'll know pretty much right away after using it a couple times. This device, this is actually the Shigeru device here with the extra little compartment to hold the finished cigarettes in. This device has a little locking mechanism up top. Lock this in place, hold this, slide it over, slide it back, release, and you have the injected cigarette here. Now it's going to come out a little bit on the top. I tend to pack it down just a little bit here, and that's gonna smoke like a very good cigarette. You can kind of feel down in this section where there's no gaps. It's nice and smooth all the way across. This is going to be a good cigarette to smoke. You're going to enjoy that. It's not going to be too thick or too thin there. So again, that's kind of the keys to look for if you have a lesser expensive injector. Now, after using this for almost an entire 5 cartons, I realized that it's over time it's not going to hold up. You know, this metal piece inside here that the tobacco sits in, that slides inside the tube, it's already starting to wobble a little bit. You know, I know for my $6 it did its job, but it's not going to last for very much longer. So and at the end there, I wasn't quite getting a consistent cigarette. I would have one a little bit too thick and one a little too thin, and part of that was user error, not necessarily indicative of this piece itself. Because for the $7 I think I spent on it, it did very well. If I were to do a user review on it, I'd give it 5 stars for what it is. And again, even if I'm not going to use this and I'm going to upgrade to something else, whether I were to choose to upgrade to another manual injector or something that has is power, you know, if you're at that point, you're spending $100, $150 or so for even the base model of the power ones. I can still use this to store the cigarettes in. So, and if one breaks, I have something to back up, so I'm not having to go out and buy a pack of cigarettes. So that's this one. Now what I ended up doing is purchasing here the Swift brand. Now this one came in a nice little package. It was about $20. The other ones I ordered online, this I actually bought at the actual store, which, you know, there's a little bit more markup there, but for what it is, it's actually fairly heavy piece. It's got a nice rubber bottom to it. And again, inside here slides out the packing tool. So this has got a little handle on it. This is going to slide over, and as you can see, as I slide this over, this is the metal piece that injects the tobacco into the tube. Now in this one, you can see it's actually much much thinner than the one that's in this one. It is, I mean, almost half the size, which I feel actually does a little bit better, because sometimes as I'm dragging this back out, pushing the cigarette back out and pulling that metal injector piece through there, it actually, because it's so big, it actually pulls out some of the tobacco, especially if it's wet and not necessarily dry. So I think the design on this one's a little bit better there. You just have to be careful because it does have a lot of sharp ridges here on this side, and so with that, you can kind of see it on this side. The sharp ridges on this side here are very very sharp. I mean, you have to be careful. They will cut you, and they put a warning label in that, of course, for the idiots that don't listen. So in this instance, it's going to work the exact same way. You're going to take the tube. Careful not to squish it, of course. It fits onto the end piece, kind of slides in there a little bit. This one I liked. It felt a little more stiff going in there, like it was going to hold it a little bit better. And again, we can see I'm going for about that 0.8. There we go, right there. So about that 0.8 worth of tobacco. I'm going to put that inside here, even it out, pack it down inside here. And again, you can see here, it may be hard to see on the video, but again, there's a little bit of a lip edge there that you don't want to go over. If you start going over that lip edge, it's just going to be too much tobacco. You're going to struggle. So they tell you in the instructions on this, if you're having to really put a lot of effort into that armature coming over, you've put too much in there. And again, you're going to either split the cigarette, break the machine, or even if you are to get over, doing that 20 times for a pack, you're going to have a sore arm and a bunch of cigarettes you can't use. So what I do on this, I kind of put my hand on it, rotate the armature over, swing it back, and just a much smoother transaction getting that tobacco inside that cigarette. These I noticed I barely had to pack in. The other one, depending on how I did, I really had to kind of pack that tobacco down inside there in a gravity force. This I didn't have to necessarily pack this one. I was very impressed with this. So again, when you're looking at the amount of tobacco to go in there, it's if you have a scale, it's about 0.8 grams. But really, you can get to an eyeball fashion on it, where you just take your 5 fingers and you get a nice pinch, and that's gonna be just fine. Just again, I'm gonna warn you, be careful, because you're gonna have to use a little bit more. It's gonna look like a little bit more when it's these stringy pieces of tobacco versus this very much finer tobacco that tends to be at the bottom of the bag. So beware of that. You can't use too much of this. It's gonna just be packed too tight. I hope this video was informative to y'all. Again, if you do the math, this is about $1 a pack. $1 a pack. Not you save $1. It's $1 a pack if you do the math. And to me, it's worth taking that little bit extra time and effort to do this instead of giving it all to Marlboro. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully it was informative. See you next time.